Thank you, Nandan, for being here. It's really very kind of you to take out time and be with us. We were wondering what we should be talking to the CFOs, what our CFOs and what our audience here would like to hear about. We for the last 1 year, we've been zoomed out of our mind, and we've all heard presentations on the economy, on various sectors, which will grow, which will not. And it occurred to us, if there's one sector, we all keep hearing bad news about India all the time. But if there's one sector we're doing really well, it is in technology. And frankly, if there's anybody who understands technology really well, it is you. So, that is what we thought will really enthuse our audience today to figure out, where exactly in India on this technology curve and, what are the challenges ahead. So that's what I want to talk to you about for the next half an hour or so. Now, we know that India is the, number 3 when it comes to the number of unicorns in the world. But when you look at the United States, there may be 10, 20 times the number, of unicorns they have. So when you look at that, the news is not exactly very happy. But, and when you look at the big people, whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook or Amazon, they're all American companies. So you feel even smaller. But, when we look back at our history, we find you've clearly got Aadhaar, you've got UPI, you've got these big achievements that we made. And long before that, we had NSDL, we had NSC, we've had ISRO. So we had great sort of, we've had a lot of examples of great success in India. So one, I wanted you to tell us that, really how big is our success? Where are we placed versus America? And then let's talk about the leap ahead after that.
Sure, Sunil. I think it's a terrific question. And I think you did place it in perspective that when we think about the digital infrastructure of India, we probably have to think of it in 3 phases. The first phase is right after liberalization, when the government took a huge step forward to modernize our banking system and modernize our stock market systems with the setting up of the NSC, automating BSC, setting up NSDL, setting up clearing companies, or the whole thing. So that happened in the 90s, and then in the 2000s also there was a big push in the government to do things. So many of the big projects like the passport project and so on came out of that push. In the first 10 years of this century. And the third push is really what happened in the last 10 years, which is putting in the digital infrastructure at the individual level and making sure that individuals have access to digital services. And that included Aadhaar, which is now about 12 years old. I joined the government in 2009, and it is now reached 1.27 billion people. It is the basis of identity for everything. It's used to deduplicate passports, deduplicate driving licenses, deduplicate PAN cards. And now there's a proposal in front of the EC to use it to deduplicate voter IDs and make it easier for people to vote when they travel. So I think that has become one fundamental thing. And linked to that, Sunil, was the connection to the banking system. So the Aadhaar linked bank account became a very important thing, both in terms of seeding the bank account as well as for opening bank accounts using the KYC. And today we have more than 700 million unique bank accounts linked to Aadhaar numbers. And that in turn laid the foundation for the world's largest direct benefit transfer program. So the government has been able to move hundreds and thousands of crores into people's accounts electronically in real time. That led to the reform of the LPG subsidy system. So earlier, if you remember, the subsidy was embedded in the price of the cylinder. Now you buy the cylinder at market price and you get cash, which you use to subsidize. So that's a very fundamental reform because it unleashes competition in that sector, and also targeting improves so that you only give the subsidy benefit to those who deserve it. And Give It Up was a major successful program. Now, this also came in handy during the pandemic because during the pandemic, government had to transfer money to vulnerable people very rapidly. And the government transferred money into the bank accounts of farmers and other affected people, all in real time. And I'm talking about 100, 200 million people got money into the bank account. And we also had another piece of the puzzle called the Aadhaar-enabled payment system, which allowed people to withdraw money from the bank account going to a business correspondent who just had a smartphone with a biometric attachment. So people not only got money into the account, in a village, they could go to a BC in the neighborhood and withdraw money. So this was fundamentally very important because at the same time, we saw that in many of the advanced countries, they also had programs to give money to their citizens, but they took months over it. They had to mail checks and a lot of errors and all that. So a lot of that actually has been solved in India. So I think on that front, we have demonstrated to the world the quality of our infrastructure. So that is one thing. And then I'll talk about UPI and then I'll stop because there are many things we can talk about. UPI was another major innovation in India. It was built by NPCI. I am an advisor on innovation and public policy to NPCI for the last 7 years. And I work closely with the leadership of NPCI, Mr. Hota, Mr. Dilip Asbe, and our other architect, Dr. Pramod Verma. And we conceived of UPI about 5-6 years back. And finally, we were able to launch it after a lot of challenges, getting everybody on board and so on, in May of 2016. And by October 2016, we had reached about 100,000 users. And then demonetization happened. And suddenly the focus came on digital payments. The government took UPI under its wings. It launched its own app called Bheem. And today UPI does 2.3 billion transactions a month. And it's a spectacular success. And everybody, I go to a vegetable vendor and they take UPI payments. So I think we have really managed to democratize payments. It's very high volume, very low cost, small transaction size payment system. And there's nothing like this in the world. And I think it's another world-beating system that we have. So there are many others, but I'll stop now because I think just with these two, we are able to transform service delivery, transform digital payments, and really touch the people. Because in the first 2 rounds, the stock market reforms touched only the people who were in stock market, which is a very small part of our population. In the second round, the benefits went to people who had passports, which were only 5% of Indians. But in the third round of automation, which began a decade back, it's really democratized and made technology access. And that's supported by the fact that the mobile industry also did a dramatic job in access. So suddenly we have the so-called jam trinity of Jandan, Aadhaar, mobile. And this has been transformational to the country, Sunil.
Okay, Nandan, I'll take you up a little bit more on that, but I want to ask you the question that only a journalist can ask. It's a very stupid question, but on a scale of 1 to 10, if America is at 10 with Google and Facebook, etc., where are we? What is our number? Is it 1, half, 0, what?
No, I think it's not a correct comparison in the sense that certainly in the area of building social media and search engines, they have done an amazing job. And today, that this year was a important year because now for the first time in America, more than half of advertising is now digital advertising. And 90% of that goes through 3 companies, Apple, Amazon, Google, and Facebook. So there's been a consolidation there and a movement of advertising from traditional models of print and television and so on to digital. India doesn't have such a big advertising business. The total advertising in India may be about $10 billion. The digital advertising is about $2-3 billion. So you can't build companies on an ad model at the scale that you have in the West. Where we are ahead is in the public digital infrastructure that we have built. And there I think we can actually say that we are better because what happened in the US, Sunil, is that when the internet essentially was up till 1995 was private, it was a government internet. Government did all the thinking. But in 1995, with the rise of Netscape, suddenly internet went private in some sense. So you had Netscape, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Facebook. And the government actually did not really invest in improving the internet from an architecture point of view post 2000. Whereas in India, the last 10 years, the stuff we have done, and there are 3 big ideas there. One is Aadhaar identity, second is UPI payments, and the third is something else we can talk about, account aggregator, which is about data empowerment. These are actually extensions to the internet only India has done. And now the world is looking at it and saying, maybe we should be doing something similar. So I would say in areas like social media and search, and e-commerce, we don't really have a great story. But in public digital infrastructure, we do have something which is world beating.
So, when you talk about public infrastructure, so, I understand what you're saying about Google and advertisement revenue and things like that. But let's say UPI, I remember at one time you used to talk about how, selling mutual funds, through Aadhaar and, UPI, we'll suddenly, have this completely new market, and for example, it'll actually be profitable to even sell 10 rupees worth of mutual funds to people. So can you tell us a little bit about this big boom in financial services that is going to happen because of this model that we chose, which is that the government creates this public infrastructure on which the private sector guys run?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a great question. See, fundamentally, what digital does is one, it makes things paperless and you can do transactions online wherever you are. And that was a huge benefit during the pandemic because people couldn't go into a bank or meet a stockbroker or whatever. It makes cashless. So UPI makes things cashless. And Aadhaar identity verification makes it, and video KYC makes it presence-less. So I can sit in my house on my phone, do an Aadhaar KYC or a video KYC and open a bank account or buy a mutual fund. So being able to buy financial products has dramatically reduced cost and improved efficiency. The second thing that UPI has a feature called auto pay, where you can set up a business rule saying debit my account every time I take a Ola, or every day put 10 rupees into my SIP. And this can be set up now as a program, and this is now getting rolled out. Or I can say I want every month to pay my Netflix subscription amount or whatever. So once this thing rolls out, you will find that subscription based services will gain huge traction, and we'll be able to do, and mutual funds, I'm already, SIPs are a huge source of money to the mutual fund industry. So you'll see more and more SIPs happening and mutual funds. Another great example of this combinatorial innovation is ASDA and UPI. The ASBA was set up by SEBI to block money in your account for an IPO, and you only debited the account when you got the allocation. Now that's been combined with UPI. So with UPI, I can block the amount and then the money gets debited when I get. So suddenly the combination of ASBA and UPI makes me very easy for me to apply for an IPO on my smartphone. So these are all essentially democratizing access to financial services, making it paperless, presenceless, cashless, reducing costs, and suddenly millions of people can participate in the financial economy. That's a very, very important thing.
True, but I'm the point that you were making, for example, on mutual funds was that, and this is a point that you made about the about the NSE and the NSDL or the passports, that till now India's financial sector really catered to people like Anant who lived in Urban Point. Now it will be able to cater to people like me who live in actually that's being facetious, but it can really boom because suddenly there's a much larger population that you can serve. See, at one point, what decided how fast Bajaj Capital would grow would be the size of its physical distribution network. Now
Yes.
That is no longer the issue. So
absolutely.
now that is really the point, that now we can expect. So you may not get technology to grow the way Amazon does, but you can expect financial services to really boom. Is that that a fair point to make?
Yes, I think it's a great point. The systems we built, especially in regulated industries like financial services, will boom. I mean, look at UPI. Today we have maybe 100 to 200 million people using UPI. So they're using it, and there are millions of merchants. We have more merchants who are taking UPI payments than we had POS machines for the last 60 years. Because we have been companies going around just sticking QR codes and good to go. So I think this massive scale up, of course, subject to people's financial purchasing power and all that, is going to be huge. And the fact that we have 700 million unique bank accounts means that 700 million Indians have a bank account linked to Aadhaar. That is a massive democratization. So I think you're right. It will go from Anant, who's standing on his beautiful roof overlooking Marine Drive and all that, to every nook and corner of India.
And you I believe are for example, when we talk about Ola and Uber, things like that, I believe you're working on some kind of an app called Beckon. Could you tell us a little bit about what that is supposed to do?
Yeah, Beckon is actually a protocol or an API being developed by a foundation set up by Dr. Pramod Verma, me, and Sujit Nair, who's actually the CEO. And the idea is, how do we unbundle these monolithic applications, in the sense that if you have e-commerce, you may order the product on one site, it may be delivered by some other company, and it may be paid by third company. So if you can unbundle this, then people can build ecosystems. Or for example, if you want to bring auto rickshaw drivers into the the sharing economy, how can they participate in that? Or how do you combine mass transit with ride sharing? So I should be able to make a booking where I book Ola on my phone, and then I book the tram, the metro ticket, and in one smooth thing, I can make the whole end-to-end travel. So it has a lot of use cases like that. Basically, it's doing to, it has the potential. It's really a long way from where we are. It has the potential to unbundle e-commerce and mobility, just like UPI unbundled payments.
No, so I mean, just let me understand this. So are we saying that, for example, I can book a cab on my Ola or Uber app, but somebody who's not on Ola Uber can actually be in a position to service it because Ola and Uber will be plugged into this beacon API?
Yes, obviously they have to adopt the protocol, but yes,
Yeah.
you're basically creating interoperability in many ways. And also I can book on Ola and on the the metro train, linking that also.
So let me, just to put it in a way that I understand this, is like, for example, in the beginning we had Paytm. So if I was a Paytm customer, I use their wallet. Later on, Paytm realized that if Paytm plugged into UPI, they may actually be a better case for Paytm to get used. So
Yes.
now, that's really what we're talking about. So what you're saying is that at some point, an Ola or an Uber or somebody like that will find it worth their while to be part of this beacon API, and so a much larger set of people can use it.
Yes. It's basically unbundling and rebundling in a way that is more democratic and allows interoperability across systems.
Okay. And
Whereas,
carry on.
Because otherwise, if you create a closed loop, see what happened in the West was ultimately you had closed loop winner take all models. So where a few companies became dramatically powerful, right? We saw that in every sector. The kind of work we do in India is actually to enable open loop models so that they're not one or two winner take all. Like China has just two players in payments. We have built a model where every bank can participate in the payment and every front-end distribution channel can participate. That creates for healthy competition and innovation. So in some sense, at the most conceptual level, we are trying to create a more competitive economy by unbundling the ecosystems of digital commerce.
But in this system, the point is when you look at Ola or Uber or Amazon, it is one company who makes a lot of profit who's driving it.
That's what I'm saying. The winner take all model.
So who pushes this in the case of a beacon?
That's a very good point. In the case of payments, because it is a regulated thing, the RBI had the foresight to do it.
Yes.
So in general, it is easier to pull off in regulated entities. But ultimately, it's also about government policy and interoperability, because government can insist that you take the example of the two exchanges and the two depositories. By law, the two depositories have to be interoperable. So NSDL and CSDL have to be interoperable by law. So you can always insist that in or stock exchanges, many areas, like airline is a great example of interoperability. When you have a PNR, that PNR can be on many airlines. It's all it's actually very well done many years back. So interoperability will be insisted upon by government. What happened in the big tech and high tech was things moved so fast that before the regulators could even design, and it's very technical stuff, even before regulators could design interoperability, people created these walled gardens.
So you're actually saying that if the government of India was to come out with a rule, say that let's say an Ola, Uber, or a Make My Trip or whoever, all their systems have to be interoperable, we can actually completely change the game.
Well, it's not just that. You need many players, and there's a whole market making effort. But broadly, yes, we should encourage interoperability like we have done in payments and so on, and that will create a more equitable system where there'll be many players, many winners, and not a situation where there's one winner take all and everybody else is a loser.
But tell me, actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about Ocean and Ocean first, and then I'll get to my next question.
Yeah. So the third big thing in India, and after identity and payments, which we worked on, and iSpirit has done a great amount of work on this, is how do we leverage data in a way that people can use their own data? And it's also linked to that question about winner take all. So what happens is, all of us who have become not natives, or have been forced to become digital natives doing all this video stuff, we are generating a huge amount of data in every transaction that we do. And that data is getting collected by a few companies, and then they're monetizing it through advertising or whatever. Now, but that data is ours. So is there a way to re-architect this so that I as an individual or I as a small business can use my own data? And we call that idea data empowerment. That is empowering individuals and businesses with their own data. And India is the only country in the world where there is a complete policy framework and a digital architecture for data empowerment. And the first implementation of that, again, is in financial services under the leadership of the RBI. But all the 4 or 5 regulators in the financial services are on board, and they have defined a concept called consent manager, and they or account aggregators who sit between data providers and data users. So to give an example, suppose I'm a small business, I want to get a loan. I go to my consent manager and say, go and get my GST record from the GST system, go and get my bank statement from the bank, get my TDS returns from the income tax system, bundle all this data in an encrypted way and give it to 2 or 3 lenders. And then the lenders can decrypt my data, and they will use their own algorithms and AI and all that and say, based on this guy's business volume and tax payment record, he's a worthy guy to give money to, and then I get a digital loan. So here, the small business is using his own data to get a loan. Whereas if you look at what happened in China, all the data is there with the guy in between, and he is then giving it to some bank at the back, and the bank is giving the loan, but the bank is not seeing all the data, and this guy can't move to another place. Whereas in the Indian model, I can go to any lender in the country. So we actually have a brand new model of credit, which I think will be one of the big things when the recovery starts, which is based on data, based on flow, and it is more working capital, cash flow oriented lending, and not asset based lending, which we have historically done.
This is the thing which is called Ocean, OCEN.
Ocean is Ocean. I mean, Ocean, I think Ocean is really the API. Ocean actually takes this to the next level. Ocean is really more the interfaces. Think of it like this. Let's say that I'm running a accounting software company. Okay, I have a lot of customers. Those customers have data, their data on my platform, like their invoices and their balance sheets and all that. I can now use Oken to connect to 5 lenders so that the companies on my platform can go to those lenders using a simple API and get loans from them. So it's all about reducing the transactional cost of making these systems work. And all these pieces it'll take some time to put all these pieces in place. But I'm confident that as we recover from the pandemic, the fact that we have this seamless digital infrastructure to give credit at scale to millions of small businesses based on data, not based on looking at your face, will have a big impact on the recovery.
This is the kind of stuff that Policy Bazaar was doing. For example, when you could look and compare all insurance policies on one place, right?
Yeah, so it could be done by lenders, wealth management companies, insurance guys, personal finance companies. It's going to create. And the good news is, and this is where I think we have to, you talked about how India is led. This is again to the credit entirely of the government, because the government came up with the concept of account aggregators. Where we got involved was in making it a more digital kind of a thing. It was already there. And this is done at the level of the FSDC, the Financial Stability Development Council, which means all the financial regulators sit on that. So the account aggregator infrastructure in India is not only endorsed by RBI, which is the lead of that, it's also endorsed by PFRDA, IRDA, SEBI, IBBI, and all that. So suddenly we have a national infrastructure for data empowerment. It's astonishing what has been done.
But in this model, my question is that if, for example, you are saying that okay, lots of financial sector players will benefit from what is happening, I presume, a lot of medical players will also benefit when you start doing, using this for medicine. But
No, already, yeah. For
yeah,
example, during the pandemic, the number of
yeah,
e-consultations went up
yeah,
dramatically.
yeah,
And in fact,
absolutely.
the real success story has been the government platform called e-Sanjeevani, which
Yeah,
has done extremely well.
yeah. So my question here is that from, if there are other people that are going to benefit from it, who is actually, how is this person who's actually creating this software benefiting from it? It's like, why would somebody want to be making a better telemedicine app or a telemedicine portal when it is going to be Dr. Reddy or, Apollo Hospital which will get the money?
So they will make money on transactions. See, we
Okay.
have to go to a model which is very high volume transactions where each transaction is a very low cost. Otherwise, we
Okay.
cannot reach 1 billion people.
So that's the difference in the Indian model and Google, etc. Is that we are lots and lots and lots of transaction, but very, very fractional cost.
Yes, yes. And
And that,
fractional value, because
yeah.
people can't afford large tickets. So the whole sachet, digital sachets, think of it like that.
Now there's one issue, when you talk about India and the digital or the tech foray. Of course, the great news is what you pointed out. But when you look at other things, and another piece of great news is India sort of become the back office of the world. So there's almost no American tech company that you can think of, whether it's Qualcomm or Google or anybody, Microsoft. Their biggest offices in the world after those in America are typically in India in terms of the number of people. And you even got Qualcomm, for example, designing chips and stuff like that. So clearly, India is doing a great job, when it comes to that. But there's this macro stuff which is a bit problematic. Whether it, if you look at R&D people per million, when you look at the amount of India spends on science and tech, when you look at, for example, the number of engineers that India has, don't we have a constraint out there?
Well, I mean, we have a constraint, but I think investments will happen there. I mean, India is now, I mean, if you look at all the great companies of the world, I mean, like GE's largest or second largest center is in Bangalore, the Jack Welch
Yeah.
R&D center, and they do very sophisticated R&D there. So a lot of R&D is happening in the in multinationals. It's happening in the Indian companies. It may not be at the scale of US or China, but it is happening. And lots of things are being developed. And we talked about in the early days of this conversation, early time, we talked about the VCs. I think we are seeing a lot of companies doing deep tech using AI. So it's quite an exciting time right now, Sunil.
And I mean, you don't think that we need to feel inferior about the fact that China is ahead of us or stuff like that? I mean, we're
Look,
developing at a reasonable pace, you
I mean,
think?
China has a is much bigger than India in every way. So that's a fact. But I think the way to think about this is India is the only young country in an aging world. The only young country when China is going to rapidly age because of the one child thing they did in 40 years back, and now they're facing the consequences. So when you have a young country in an aging world, the demographics are in your favor, and you will definitely be able to get to 5-6% growth. And if the rest of the world, because of its demographics and so on, is growing at 1 or 2%, and you're growing at 4, 5, 6% continuously over 20 years, then you're actually going to do a significant catch up.
Okay. Now, the other point that I wanted to talk about was that, if you look at, let's say, for example, you look at Uber. Now, it was the fact that you had the GPS, which was made, by American defense, that Uber started working. The internet actually again came out of a DARPA program, which is where Google and all came out from. So essentially, India. I don't want to get into which government or stuff like that, but essentially, what we're saying is we are now getting it right in the sense that we are creating public infrastructure with public money, which is going to help a large number of companies. I mean, that's really how we're getting our formula right.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at just in the in the startup space, a company like Paytm is a big user of UPI. It has a $17 billion valuation. PhonePe, which is now part of Walmart, is supposed to be worth a few $1 billion. It's the largest UPI player. There's a company called BharatPe, which is just becoming a unicorn, which has done an amazing job of spreading QR codes among retailers. Zerodha, which has become the largest online stock exchange, is the online trading app, right? It's done that because they built a superb application which allows people to open an account in a few seconds with using all this technology, Aadhaar or video KYC. So, and that's an unlisted company. I'm sure it's worth a lot of money. So fundamentally, we are now seeing the rise of companies. Razor Pay, which is a digital payment aggregator, just got a unicorn valuation. So, you're seeing now that on the digital infrastructure the government has laid, innovation is happening, competition happening, and billions of dollars of value is being created. So that's exactly the model of the West. The West invested public money in internet, public money in GPS, and that allowed the Ubers and the Googles to succeed. So we are creating something similar here.
Okay, I think thank you very much, Nandan. This has been a great discussion. I think Anant had a few questions, so why don't I leave it to you, Anant, to begin?
No. I mean, I think the second question Nandan answered, which I wanted to ask him was, the ministers of MSME spoke about 30% of the GDP coming from MSMEs. But, as we digitize and you see digital companies that are in the whole tech world, you see it's all a winner take all, right? I mean,
that's the difference, Anand. In the Indian model, it's not winner take all because of the architecture we have. Yeah.
Yes. But I mean, but what happens to the little guy? What happens to the sub 100 crore, sub 200 crore companies?
No, they will benefit. Suppose there are about 10, 11 million people now on the GST platform. They are filing their GST returns and they're filing invoices with the GST model, and the GST system is going to make that data available in a secure way back to these companies. So if I'm a 200 crore company that is filing GST, and I can now request GST in turn to give that data to me signed, saying this is authentic data, and then I can send it electronically to a bank and the bank will give me a loan. Today, banks find it extremely difficult to give loans to small companies because they can't go and evaluate them. Now the evaluation is all digital, and they can apply AI. Right. So in fact, what all this stuff will actually make it easier for small businesses to get access to credit. Similarly, the e-commerce, small businesses get access to markets. So like that, if we can get more and more companies on this digital highway, they will actually see growth coming.
And Nandan, the other question I wanted to ask you was, I want to know your views on cryptocurrencies. It's getting legitimacy around the world.
Yeah. So I think, I'll just unpack this. First of all, I think everybody agrees that blockchain is a great technology and we can apply it for things like supply chain or cross-border transactions or whatever. So that everybody buys it. On cryptocurrencies, I mean, some people believe they could be banned, but my personal view is don't think of crypto as a transactional currency, because it will never be able to meet the transactional efficiency of UPI in India anyway. UPI does 2.3 billion transactions a month, and the architecture built by NPCI is for 1 billion transactions a day at almost zero cost. So Bitcoin can never compete on transactional efficiency. So don't think of Bitcoin as a way to pay for small things. Think of it as an asset class. An asset class where, just like I keep some money in gold or real estate, I can keep some money in Bitcoin, and you can put a set of rules around it. I mean, remember in India in 1968, we had something called the Gold Control Order passed by Morarji Desai, where everybody was criminalized for holding gold, right? And then as part of liberalization in 1990, we said, no, it's okay, let people have gold. So I think we should have a model of cryptos, whether it's Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever, as asset class, which I can hold. I may have to declare it, I may have to pay taxes on it, all that is required, but bring that within the system. Then there's the question of the digital rupee. I believe that, yes, Indian government, RBI can definitely look at a digital rupee, and it can use the distribution architecture of UPI to reach 200 million people. No other country can do this, because the UPI architecture allows multiple stored value accounts. So on UPI, I can have a bank account, a wallet, a Bitcoin account, or a account from a digital rupee. So I think depending on which aspect you're talking about, my view is digital rupee, yes. Bitcoin as an asset class, use the blockchain for applications. I don't think we need stable coins, because the digital rupee is a government fiat stable coin. And I think that's the way I think about it.
No, but the question is, if you find that it's going to be inefficient to transact, then investing in it in itself, then you'll see that. I mean, at some point, it kind of plateaus. The value of it will kind of
No,
will.
I mean, India has thousands of tons of gold here. I mean, we keep them as an asset. We keep them at home.
But
You
that's an
can't
Indian problem. But globally, you think Bitcoin will be, or cryptocurrencies will be a transactional currency, or will it only be in India? Where you think?
No, in India, definitely, I don't think it'll be transactional because we have a better system. We have a superior transaction system. It may be possible that in the West, because their payment systems the government may, but I have a feeling that will come from this so-called central bank digital currencies like the digital dollar or the digital rupee, which will be zero transaction cost fiat currencies. That's the way the central bankers are thinking about it.
Right. Because regulators in India, whoever you speak to, they feel very nervous about cryptocurrency. Like
So look, it's like this. You need to have a set of rules saying that, just like we have the LRS, right? In LRS, we say everybody can transfer $250,000 a year abroad. So you have accepted that earlier we couldn't. I mean, to go to abroad, I had to go and ask for $5 a day from
$50 a day.
So we have liberalized. So same thing it is. It is saying that individual can have not more than X rupees worth of Bitcoin or whatever. And most people who are law-abiding will follow that. Some people will not, but then those guys will be doing it today also. So what is
do you ever envision a situation where there's a big client of Infosys, for instance, in in the US, who says that we want to pay in Bitcoin?
Well, I mean,
institutional B2B.
I mean, I haven't heard that yet, but it's possible, but not yet.
I think the taxman is listening to this, so you want to hedge your bets on that. Anant,
I mean, the only corporation that is holding Bitcoin seems to be Tesla right now.
So. Yes.
Anant, I just want to add to what Nandan was talking about the small guy. So, for example, we've got this thing called DigiSign. Now, unlike, so digital signatures in India are perhaps the cheapest in the world.
Yeah.
Then you've got the DigiLocker, where you actually get certificates like your birth certificate and stuff like that, or your school leaving certificate from the government.
Yeah.
So we're actually creating a model now where the small guy, you will get genuine stuff. So it will be no longer possible to give you fraud documents or things like that. So as Nandan said, this is an enormous kind of architecture which is being built out.
Yeah.
In fact, Nandan, I just want to read out a statement that Mr. Ramadorai has just sent me on the WhatsApp. Basically, he's saying that we've got a unique public-private partnership for people empowerment. This is going to spur innovation and access to services. This is truly digital democracy once it's fully rolled out, and it's the empowerment of every citizen, hopefully. So,
No.
I mean...
No, I think Ramadorai gets it absolutely right. In fact, TCS were pioneers in rolling out the passport system. So he fully understands all this. I'll just give one last example of this. I went for my vaccination last week, and I got the vaccination done thanks to my good friend, Dr. Devi Shetty at his hospital. Within 5 minutes of my vaccination, I got a digital certificate on my vaccination. And those of us, you will get it soon now that your age has been lowered.
Anant is still not 45. So
Anant, he's a Peter Pan. He may be forever young. I got a certificate. Now, I got a printed copy, which is digitally signed, encrypted with a QR code, which ensures there's no fraud. Same time, a few days back, my friend in Seattle, which is the capital of technology on the West Coast, which are some of the biggest companies in the world, he got his vaccination and he got a piece of handwritten paper. I mean, there's no comparison.
Right.
The leapfrog in India on these things is extraordinary.
In fact, this is why Sharad Sharma, you very well, an expert. He's been telling us that, forget yoga, think India stack, So people talk about what they can learn from India, and it's always yoga and meditation and things like that. He said, boss, that's good, but forget about it. If Mr. Jaishankar can take India stack and offer it to people abroad, that is a great diplomatic initiative from his point of view, because what you guys have done is really amazing. I just want to ask you one last question, and then I'll let you go, because we also had a hard stop of 45 minutes. I think we're okay on that. What you've done is a great thing. Now, what I want to know is that what, you were part of the previous government, and okay, so you said that you've been advising NPCI on the UPI. What is the kind of advice or this, that you would tell the government? What does the government need to do now? Does it need, a task force? Does it need, another Nandan Nilekani to do another Aadhaar kind of a thing? What does the government need to do? Just tell us 2 or 3 things.
No, I think now we are much more broad-based in the system. I mean, we have a lot more officers in the government who are extremely technology savvy. As you know, in the late 70s, the IAS was open to engineering graduates. So we have a lot of IITians and others at the highest levels of government. They have got deep experience in building technology. Ajay Bhushan Pandey was working in UIDI with me. Then he became the revenue secretary, did amazing work on improving GST, applying AI. Ram Sevak Sharma is now leading the COVID thing. So there are many officers, and I think the value of tech has been understood. I mean, when you can credit 150 million people money into the bank accounts in real time, people say, wow, there is something here. So I think everybody gets it. And I think now it's much more broad-based, Sunil. I mean, I think the acceptance level is very high. And, I mean, you are talking about FASTag. FASTag actually came out of a report that I did in 2010 at the request of the then road minister, Mr. Kamal Nath. And today, FASTag, thanks to Mr. Gadkari, is ubiquitous. And it's raising 100 crores a day.
And you can buy it on Paytm in 5 minutes.
So it's incredible. I go to Kunur via Salem. It saves me 20-25 minutes because I'm able to zip through the toll booths. So I think we are now finally seeing all this technology actually impacting the lives of people. I came out of a haircut the other day and outside was a vendor of coconuts, and he said Google Pay accepted here. I said, man, this is democracy.
By the way, I have another message from Mr. Ramdarai. He just tells me he got the same certificate like you did, but he did one better than you. He got a call from the Ministry of Health to ask him how the experience was.
Yes. This is all, man. That's the thing. The stuff that's happening, it's a silent revolution. We don't notice it because it's happening a little bit every day. But if you take a decadal view, it's an extraordinary revolution.
Anyway, thank you, Nandan, so much. I think it's been a brilliant end to a great function, and our audience, our CFOs are truly delighted. I can see from the comments I'm getting by what you've given, by the knowledge you've given them, and they're all saying more power to you.